Yeah, so Stephanie has been living with type 1 diabetes since age 5. Growing up with diabetes was a challenge that felt insurmountable, especially when considering exercise combined with insulin dosage adjustments and learning different strategies for feeding relating to physical activity. Stephanie was hesitant towards becoming active until she was 25. So, what changed? Seeing many doctors and diabetes clinic members who were not well versed at that time in coaching people through insulin and meal adjustments, Stephanie decided she needed to become her own expert, despite how uncomfortable and scary trial and error can be. Stephanie found these adjustments didn't become easier with practice, but the positive effects of exercise became apparent, and Stephanie discovered exercise added vitality to her time on this planet. This vitality fueled a career in exercise, and Stephanie got her Bachelor of Science degree in kinesiology from Simon Fraser University in 2013, and then went on to get certified as a clinical exercise physiologist from the American College of Sports Medicine in 2016. To be able to provide support to all our T1Ds in their journey to becoming physically active, no matter where they are in their athletic development, from never having lifted a dumbbell to training for advanced competition. Stephanie trail runs in the summer and has experience with stand-up paddleboarding, mountain biking, camping, and recently got into motorcycling. A former obstacle sports racer, for example, Spartan Race, Tough Mudder, and Spencer Winters in biathlon and cross-country skiing races. She uses Android APS to loop with a Dexcom G6 and Omnipod Dash. And I will hand it off to Dan now to introduce himself.
Hi everyone, it's great to see you all there. You all here, sorry. For those who don't know me, my name's Daniel. I've been managing with type 1 diabetes for around, I think, 12 years. I'm a passionate advocate for incorporating exercise into diabetes management routines. Much of my experience is doing that around adapting my exercise to suit my diabetes has been done through experimenting, but also through a great support team of endocrinologists and things like that, which I think groups like this are the things that kind of got me to where I am today. But I understand firsthand the challenges and triumphs that come with balancing exercise and blood sugar levels. Over the years, I've learned loads of valuable lessons through lots of trial and error, a few scary trial and errors, but anyway. And the importance of mainly preparation and just monitoring and adjusting insulin doses to make sure that I can continue doing what it is that I want to do. And using these skills, I've been able to take part in all sorts of forms of exercises, everything from playing national level rugby, mountain biking, backcountry camping. A particularly interesting one to try and sort out was scuba diving. Well, that was a tough one. But yeah, a bit of everything because it's always good fun trying to figure out and be creative problem solving. But yeah, today I'm just excited to share my experiences with you all and learn from all of your experiences as well, as we all have really unique journeys through diabetes, especially around exercises. And yeah, I'll pass it along back to Caleb.
All right. Thank
Oh,
you, Dan.
actually, sorry. One other thing I figured I should probably add. I am on an insulin pump, a Medtronic 780G, and I just do finger prick blood sugar tests. Sorry, I forgot to add that bit.
No worries. Well, without further ado, I will give the floor to Stephanie now, and you can go through your experiences with us.
Great. Okay, so thanks again, Caleb, for the introduction, and I look forward to hearing about scuba diving tips from Dan because that's on my bucket list. So I created a presentation. I'm going to try to keep it to 10 minutes. And certainly, there's going to be lots of rooms for questions and whatnot afterward, to my knowledge. And there were some pre-submitted questions that I also answered, but I think we are going to be reviewing that toward the end. So thanks everyone for submitting those questions. So I'm just going to start my presentation and then share my screen. Oh, no, I had to do that in the other direction. 1 second. Share my screen and then start the presentation. And there we go. And slideshow. There we go. Cool. Awesome. So I wanted to, I wanted to give an overview of gear, because I think that's really important, dosing and feeding. So why I chose to focus on these is because I think that a lot of the times for people who are just getting started, sometimes the hardest part is just making sure that you have the right gear. And I also wanted to talk about dosing. So that's all stuff that some of it I will share as what's literature supported, and stuff that is anecdotal, meaning that it worked for me. And I make no guarantees or claims to its safety. I will only speak to its efficacy in my own life. And feeding, again, what some basic physiology that I presented during my last presentation a couple of years ago when I talked about the ups and downs of exercise, and also just some general guidelines in terms of how much to have, and how to make some good food choices. Be prepared. Yeah, I know we've spent our whole diabetes lives being told to be prepared, and there's always going to be a time that you're not prepared. So you'll find ways to get around it. You'll make detours, or you'll ask friends for food, or sometimes you'll just run into I'm sure we've all of us at one point or another have gone into a 7-Eleven and cracked a bottle of Coca-Cola while they're standing in line to pay for it, because they just needed it so badly. So hopefully those emergency situations are fewer and far between, especially if you're out in the wilderness. There isn't really anywhere close by that you can hit up for some glucose. So this is the gear that I use. Again, in the summertime, I primarily go trail running, but I do occasionally go mountain biking. I do go stand-up paddleboarding. I do have experience indoor rock climbing, but most of the things that I'm doing are outside in trails, and they're near cities. I'm not really doing overnight, hiking, camping adventures, but I do go camping from time to time. So again, of course, it comes down to personal preference, but this is what I use. So I can't say enough good things about using a trail running vest, and why I love it is because it holds 2.5 liters of liquid. It has 12 liters of total storage volume. But most importantly, it doesn't get in the way when I'm running, and it doesn't feel like I'm carrying something. So I personally hate schlepping things with me, which is why I don't do any overnight backpacking adventures. But if I can't strap my gear to my bicycle or my motorcycle or in my car, I generally don't want to do it. So the trail running vest is, for me, the harmony of allowing me to be prepared and allowing me to experience the outdoors. I live in the Okanagan, so I've tested it to below -20 degrees Celsius in the winter when I go cross country skiing. And I've had it attached to my body trail running right after work in the middle of the day when it's, +40 degrees in the summertime. And mine's now 6 years old, and it hasn't fallen apart. In fact, I don't think it's going to fall apart anytime soon. So it's great because it has zippered compartments, and I can put lots of liquid and food with me. And so and my phone and everything that I would need to stay connected to my gear, keep the whole closed loop system running. I also use a Garmin watch and a handlebar mount. And so some people who have loop systems might be wondering why I'm not using a smartwatch. I was personally concerned about the smartwatch keeping moving while being active, but really it was more that I already had the Garmin watch, and the Garmin watch allows for different screens. You can change your watch face, and you can change your data field to be able to feed in from XStrip. So XStrip is the open source blood sugar app that I use to get the readings from my Dexcom G6. And then I used Android APS, which is the program that I use to integrate the insulin data from the Omnipod and the blood sugar data from the G6 to create build my own DIY, let's say, closed loop system. So I love it because the Garmin watch has smash proof glass. Again, my watch is probably 6 years old. It has fantastic battery life. And I use it I can put it on my bicycle. I can put it on the handlebars of my bike. I have 2 bicycles. I have a motorcycle. So I don't even use the zapped straps with the handlebar mount. I just move it onto my wheels that I'm using, put my watch on, and it gives me my live glucose. And you know, again, like, could I just pull up my phone? Yes, I need to have my phone with me so that the whole system runs. But it's much easier for me to take a look at my watch than it is for me to look at my phone, because most of the time you don't really actually need to stop what you're doing. You just want to see, is my blood sugar doing okay? How's my blood sugar trending? Do I need to stop and have some sugar, or do I actually need to make an insulin treatment decision? So all in all, I find that anything that reduces my need to look at my phone when I'm doing the activity, for me, is a psychological benefit, because I am interested in the data, but I also still want to be somewhat removed from it and be able to enjoy the activity that I'm doing. So it's waterproof, smash proof. Like I said, it's just I love it. Having a waterproof phone pouch is super important. Again, when I go stand up paddleboarding, what I do is I wear my watch around, or sorry, wear my phone around my neck, because I do need the phone to be able to give insulin and maintain that connection. But of course, the catch is that it uses Bluetooth, so it won't really be reliable if submerged for more than 10 minutes at a time. So usually when I'm stand-up paddleboarding, I'm not in the water. In my days when I was swimming, I did actually just leave my phone away from me and tried to go near it every 10 minutes. That had some mixed results. I probably would have to move back onto finger pricks and injecting if I wanted to make that a bigger part of my life. But so far, this has been really helpful for me. I can't explain how magical this discovery was. So I don't know how many people use gels. Gels are $3 each. So I used to go to Mech and I'd buy the gels, to have glucose on my person that wasn't taking up a lot of space, right? I mean, first there were juice boxes, but juice boxes have 25 grams of glucose in them. They can't be, you have to consume the whole thing. You can't really consume it partially. And the gels, again, squeezing gel out of a pouch isn't necessarily the most pleasant experience. And then you have this extra garbage to deal with. So I had this, I don't know how I came across this. I had this stroke of genius that I was going to go to Dollarama and buy a travel size toiletries kit. And so the ones that don't have the little spray bottle in them, like these solid ones here, I fill them with a tablespoon. I measure out a tablespoon of maple syrup, and a tablespoon of maple syrup is 13 grams of glucose. So I know, okay, I'm going to fill up 3 of those with me for my activity that's lasting, say, 3 hours. And I can add in 2 tablespoons into the same bottle if I want, but I love the precision, and I love that it's refillable, so I'm not creating so much trash. And maple syrup is way tastier and cheaper than the gels. I mean, maple syrup's not, it's $16 for a liter, so it's not cheap, but it's cheap and it holds up. I think I developed this when we had the Dex 4 shortages Canada wide. I had to find a new way to go. I was a big Cliff Bar consumer for a long time, but I just found that the solid food didn't elevate me fast enough. And I'll touch on that later in this show, why liquids tend to work better than solids. But this has just been such a game changer for me. I recently, at the beginning of April, I did a 20-kilometer cross-country ski race, and I had 3 of those bottles with me filled with 1 tablespoon of maple syrup each. And I actually didn't require any of it during the race. Again, race adrenaline helps to have your liver release glycogen. Glycogen is a stored form of glucose. So race nerves kept me going, and I didn't actually need to consume any of the maple syrup that I had with me. So again, it's versatile through weather and through different weather conditions. I also attach a safety pin to my vest. Some people asked in the questions that were submitted, how much backup insulin gear do you bring? It depends on the duration of the activity. Because more of my activities are shorter, I just bring a safety pin with me. And the reason why I do that is because that's the back of my Omnipod. On the back side of every Omnipod, there's a little hole that you can stick the pin in. And the only reason why you would want to do that is if your pod is making an alarm. So I used to be very susceptible to having pods just stop working on me in the middle of a physical activity. And I learned that that was because the outside air was too cold compared to my body temperature. And it was sensing the temperature difference as a cannula occlusion. And then it was stopping delivering insulin. And that happened to me, I want to say 50 times. And I'm not exaggerating. So I had a bit of PTSD from it. I was like, okay, I'm just going to bring this pin with me and I'm just going to puncture the circuit board and, you know, try to get back to the rest of my activity. You have to remember that if you're in a short duration activity, and when I say short duration, I mean less than 2 hours, if there's no insulin being delivered, it's not the end of the world, because you'll get home and you'll get to your car or whatever, and you'll be able to dose, right? The only time that you're going to run into considerations, or where you need to really, where I would bring extra gear with me, is if I was planning like another 8-hour race or an 8-hour excursion, where, you know, making sure that I have backup insulin is important for me. So now talking about dosing strategies. So earlier I mentioned that some things are literature supported and some things are anecdotal. So the literature supports that for your bolus dose pre-activity, if your activity is less than 2 hours from your meal, you reduce your bolus dose by 50%. If your physical activity is 2 to 4 hours from your last meal, then you reduce your bolus dose by 25%. Those are literature supported. I personally have learned from talking with other people with type 1 that I just prefer not to have any bolus on board whatsoever, because I found that there was no, my bolus adjustments were wrong most of the time. So it's really at your comfort level. Post-exercise. So a lot of people talk about how their blood sugar rises after physical activity, and some of it can be related to the sharpness of how quickly your blood sugar drops. That can cause stored glycogen from your liver to be released and elevate your blood sugar. However, when you're physically active, 90% of your blood is in your extremities. It's no longer in your trunk. It's no longer in your gut. So as soon as you relax, as soon as you stop exercising, all the blood from your skeletal muscles returns to your trunk. And now all that sugar you consumed that wasn't elevating your blood glucose fast enough, well, guess what? Now your body's going to absorb it. So I have found that if I have carbs on board, so meaning, okay, I started cross country, I started trail running, I had some maple syrup only half an hour before my run finished. So there's still, say, 9 or 10 grams of carbs on board. If I'm not anticipating that I'm going home to eat right away, I will give a small corrective bolus, and I usually reduce that by 75%. So let's just say, for example, I plug in 9 grams of carbs into my bolus wizard, and based on my blood sugar, it's telling me, oh, I need to take one unit of insulin. So I'm actually going to give myself only a quarter unit of insulin. I'm going to reduce that by 75%, because you're still very insulin sensitive immediately following exercise. So you don't want to take too much. And it's always better, especially when you're trying a new dosing regimen, to err on the side of caution and give yourself less rather than chase the lows, because that can be really challenging to deal with, right? No one wants to exercise and then spend the rest of their day eating, and you may not be able to, depending on your location, proximity to food, you may or may not be close to being able to do that. Basal dose adjustments. So the literature states that if you're pumping, you should introduce a temp basal for a certain duration prior to the activity starting and for the entire duration of the activity, and sometimes even for a little bit of time after that activity. How much you decrease it will depend on the duration and intensity of your workout. So for example, if you're going out for a walk, say half an hour, it may not be that intense. So you may only need to reduce your basal rate by 10%. But again, it's going to vary a lot, and it varies a lot based on the time of your last meal, whether you made any bolus adjustments, and other factors such as heat. I personally find I'm more insulin sensitive in the summer because in the summertime, your body's working hard to cool you off, so more blood flow goes to your skin, and you're going to require less insulin. It's so sensitive in me that when I take a long shower to wash my hair, my blood sugar drops every time. Like without fail, double arrow down, it drops really quickly. So anxiety as adrenaline, as I mentioned, race nerves, or you're going on a new trail that you don't know, or you're going somewhere where you're in an uncomfortable situation. Anytime that you're anxious or concerned or stressed, that's going to cause more adrenaline to spike, which means that you're going to release some more stored glycogen from your liver. So that's going to produce some more insulin resistance. And of course, there's other hormonal factors. If you're female, the time of your cycle affects how insulin resistant or how insulin sensitive you are. And if you're male, testosterone is also going to greatly impact how insulin sensitive you are. If you have an opportunity to introduce a temporary target, and so again, I say that if you're using a pump or you're using a closed loop system, I've found a lot of success using a temporary target rather than a basal adjustment, but that's because the temporary target will automatically adjust my basal rate at that moment in time to keep me at whatever my temp target is. So if I'm going to the gym, I set my temp target to 8.0 for it could be 2 to 4 hours before I even go to the gym, and then for the duration of my gym workout. If I'm going trail running, I will set it to 9.0 for some time beforehand. So usually when I go trail running, it's on a Saturday morning. So let's say I get up at 6:30, I'm going trail running at 9. I start my temp target at 9.0 immediately for the time all the way from when I woke up to the end of when I'm expecting my run to end. So the example I gave below gives some time course there. Again, that's been my personal experience, that running the temp target. I found that the basal rates I couldn't adjust, and I haven't injected since 2008. So that was actually the primary reason I went on to pumping, was because I was becoming a lot more physically active, and I didn't like that I would be stuck with my basal dose for a full 24 hours. So I wanted something that was more dynamic. And of course, the best part, feeding. So just another reminder that, when we're at rest right now, we're all waiting to have dinner, or maybe you've already had dinner, but 90% of our blood flow is to our trunk, our internal organs. When we exercise, the blood from our trunk gets shunted to our skeletal muscles to help with our physical activity. So that means that anything that we eat is going to be more difficult for our bodies to absorb it. It's not that you don't absorb it, it's that it's going to be delayed. It's not going to happen at the same way that it would when you're at rest. So in saying that, again, I find personally that liquids or gummies will allow for greater glucose absorption. That's why I completely abandoned the Cliff Bars and all the solid foods. If you have insulin on board, the official literature carbohydrate recommendations that you need to have 30 to 50 grams of glucose per hour. And if you don't have insulin on board, then you can get away with a little bit less, 10 to 30 grams per hour, again, depending on how your blood sugar is trending. If you are someone who is injecting and finger pricking, I would highly recommend getting a continuous glucose monitor over a pump. Even though a pump is more dynamic for your dosing, the continuous glucose monitor is going to give you way more information in terms of what needs to be changed. And the cool part about using the Loop system, the Loop app, is that you can even use the bolus wizard, even though there's no just by using the Dexcom readings, even though you're not pumping, even though it can't make the pump adjustments, it can still modify the bolus calculations based on how your blood sugar has been trending. and what you're planning to do for activity. So I find that really fantastic. In terms of solid food, so again, if you're thinking about activity that's more than 4 hours in duration, there is some literature that supports having not just straight up glucose, but having glucose and protein. And the reason why that is because protein helps to rebuild muscle damage. So at any given time where we have the ability to store fat, we have the ability to store glucose and glycogen and carbohydrates, our bodies don't have the ability to store protein. So every time that you're walking or moving, there's a slow amount of protein catabolism, meaning that your body's breaking down protein, breaking down your muscles for energy. So consuming protein, again, about 30 grams after about 4 hours is what's recommended to help to make sure that you don't break down protein while you're out there exercising. So, but really, the majority of people are focusing on shorter duration activities, so you don't really need to worry about that protein replenishment. And again, unless you're doing something that's greater than 4 hours and something that's really high impact. So like swimming, you won't really need it as much, but definitely running, hiking, walking, anything that you're having an impact is a good stress for your body. It's a great stress for your body. For your bones, it helps to keep your bones and your skeleton strong. Great for your heart, helps to keep your heart strong. But after that amount of time, after 4 hours, you do start to have some biomechanical wear and tear, and having some glucose with protein could be a good idea. That's the end of my presentation.
I think on that note, thank you very much, Stephanie. That was awesome. Does anybody have any specific questions around anything just from that?
Yeah, I actually do. Hi, Stephanie. I'm Kara. I don't know if I've actually yet met you, but it's nice to
Kara?
meet you. So my husband and I were just talking about actually just last night, maybe doing some more longer bike rides, like more than an hour.
Mhm.
From your experience, what would you recommend for that aside from maple syrup?
So I used to actually just consume Gatorade. Like
Okay.
I used to have IBS, which I don't really
Oh,
have I don't have that anymore since I started bodybuilding last year, and I found that making sure that I was eating enough protein, all of a sudden my guts weren't so angry anymore. So after
right.
a lot of trial and error, I used Gatorade because I could measure it out, right? So
Right.
I showed earlier the trail running vest. So
Yes.
what I liked about the Gatorade was that again I could really titrate how concentrated I wanted it to be. So I had one bottle that was like half concentration, so that 500 mils of liquid would give me 15 grams of glucose. Then I had another bottle where 500 mils of liquid would give me 30 grams of glucose. And then again,
Right.
I would fill my backpack with water or Gatorade, again, depending on what the activity was. So I really liked that I could customize it. Yeah.
Right.
And again, the vest wearing cycling, I'd wear it road cycling, I'd wear it mountain biking.
Okay.
It never got in the way. So I couldn't say enough good things about it.
Awesome. Yeah, I was also trying to figure out where I'm going to put my pump now that we're thinking of doing that because that's always the fun part about living with an insulin pump. But appreciate
Yeah.
your input. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Excellent. Well, we will hand it off to Daniel now, and then we have the pre-submitted and the chat Q&As that we will go through afterwards. Oh, sorry, you're muted.
Yeah,
There.
I thought we were going straight into the pre-submitted questions, weren't we?
Oh, yeah, we can go through
Yeah,
those now. I didn't know if you had something that you were wanting to discuss as well.
no, not specifically. It's just I thought we were going to go over the questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also, Stephanie, I have never heard of the toiletries hack, and I'm getting one this week. I'm already excited that I can put syrup inside of that instead of buy the Dex tabs and gels when I'm doing activities.
I swear to God, Caleb, it changed my life. I was like, this is the best accident ever.
Yeah, I don't know how I haven't heard of
Yeah,
it before, but that is
yeah.
definitely going into my tools. All right, so for the questions, for the pre-submitted, we'll start with the exercise specific. All of these ones are anonymous, but if whoever submitted them is in the chat and would like to follow up, they are more than welcome. So the first one we have is walking on a golf course. Is it better to have many snacks while playing or have less insulin at mealtime?
Stephanie, do you want to, I think you talked a little bit about this in your presentation. You want to kind of reiterate in relation to
Yeah,
that?
yeah. So I actually wrote out these answers, so this helps me. So I said it depends on when the game is. So, again, if I was planning 9 a.m. round, I'd wake up at 7 a.m., turn on a temp target of 8.0 for 6 hours, and I would only eat protein and fat upon waking. So I've got no bolus on board. I'm just having protein and fat. Usually I have my go-tos are two light Baby Bell cheeses and 100 grams of deli meat. Again, I find that makes it the most least tummy yucky. And then I'll have 10 to 15 grams of carbs within 30 to 60 minutes before the golf game, but with no bolus. So I love crackers. I didn't think I would love crackers. Again, this is a new recent development, but anything, yeah, crackers or rice cakes, something that's really fast absorbing. And I find that by the time I start that activity, and I do this for trail running or any exercise that I do in the morning, that it'll elevate me to about 10 or 11, but it'll drop me to 5 by the time I'm finished. And that could be with or without glucose, depending on how fast I drop. But I get nervous if I'm in the single digits when I start activity, because I will drop for sure.
Yeah, I mean, just building on that, I don't, as I said before, I just do finger pricks, so I don't have the CGM kind of system that you're talking about there. But I do something really similar, for instance, if I'm going mountain biking or hiking or something like that, depending on how vigorous the activity is going to be, like for instance, for walking around a golf course, it's obviously walking around, it's exercise, but it's not super vigorous. So I would do something similar, like maybe half an hour before, like reduce my temp basal probably about 50%. And depending on, like I always find, it's kind of the more work you do beforehand, the less work you have to do during. So yeah, as I said, reduce your temp basal before and do lots of testing just before you start. And depending on where it is, as Stephanie said, I would aim to be somewhere around 9 or 10 as I start, or maybe something a little bit lower if it's less intense as walking around a golf course, and then taking some carbs as need to kind of get me where I want to be at the start, and then kind of just going from there. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you both. If whoever asked that question is on the call, would you like to follow up at all? No. All right. So our next one is swimming in sand with a pump. Any tips or suggestions?
Before we move on to, I think Daryl just sent a message in the chat just asking. Oh, he was just asking why I don't get a sensor. Just to just to answer that, I would say because a lot of the activities that I do, I don't like having another thing stuck on me. Like I play a lot of rugby, so I can't even play rugby with an insulin pump on. I initially started trying to do that, but getting dump tackled onto a very hard metal object, you learn very quickly that's not a great thing you want to be doing, and I've broken a couple that way. But yeah, just the activities that I do, I find they kind of get ripped off, or just because they are really vigorous, like the sensor can get bent a little bit. Within a couple of times I did try it and things like that, and I kind of get by well enough with just finger pricks. If I do it, like I said, like you do all your prep work beforehand, like I test loads leading up to exercise to get like a really good idea of where it is going, whether it's going up, down, or staying level, the same way as you would with or similar to as you would with a CGM. But yeah, I just don't have to lug around an extra thing with me or have to worry about an extra thing, especially if I'm going backcountry camping or something like that, already having to bring like an extra sight change or two and other bits and pieces, having to then also potentially bring other stuff because it could go wrong. I just find with the activities that I do, the finger probe is kind of just the best thing to fit for me.
Yeah,
Can
it
you hear
does.
me?
It does increase your gear. And I was gonna say, Daniel, Dan, I think that Max Domi, who's an NHL player, uses an insulin pump, but also finger pricks for the same reason. Doesn't want to get it jostled, is concerned it's going to ruin a lot of sensors because it gets impacted and stops working, right? So, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
So when you do Abbott versus Dexcom, they replace it all the time. They do. You phone them up and listen, this went wrong, that went wrong. They replace it. And what went wrong? They want to know. You tell them. I bumped into a door. I toweled off. Like whatever it is, they'll replace it all the time. I've never heard them not replace it for me. And I'm only diabetic for about 20 something years. But every single time they'll give me a new one.
Yeah, no, I would. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I was in Hawaii once, and it's the one time I didn't take a loaner pump with me, and I think I fell during hiking. The pump seemed to be okay, but then the alarm started and I couldn't get it to stop. Anyway, you're right, they do replace the pump, but it took me a week to get it in Hawaii.
I'm just talking about the sensor. I'm just talking about the sensor.
They don't replace the sensor.
I thought you were talking about the pump. Sorry.
They don't replace the sensor if you're using an open source app. Buyer beware.
And then they only replace the sensor 3 times a year, apparently, too. No?
No. Every single time I've phoned, I get a new one.
Well, they have changed it now.
No, Abbott. They literally now, Abbott versus Dexcom, most of you use Dexcom, but Abbott they literally now you could push buttons to get a new sensor.
Yes, but I recently went on the Dexcom site, and there is a new bold statement that says we will only replace your sensor 3 times in 12 months.
Okay.
I suppose some people are trying to work the system.
Yeah, like your point's really good there, Daryl. Yeah, like you're absolutely right. It's not the hassle of getting a new one if I break it or whatever reason. It's more just sorry, not about the worry of getting a new one when I break it. It's more just the hassle of having to do that, or if, like I said, I'm having to bring extra things with me, and I can get by perfectly well with just doing finger pricks and things like that. So it's just another thing that I would have on me that I can do without and manage perfectly well. So, but
I get it. I put on a wetsuit when I go windsurfing. I put on my wetsuit, and I worry every time putting on the wetsuit and taking off the wetsuit to go windsurfing.
That's a delicate procedure.
Peeling it off.
Yes.
It
is a very delicate procedure.
Oh,
yeah.
I get it.
Used wetsuits. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying for that though, Dan. That was what made me switch to MDI. I switched to completely to MDI and finger pricks when I was touring for rugby. Just because it's like, well, this is probably going to happen every other time. So instead of having that stress, I'm just going to go completely finger prick MDI mode and just never have it to worry in the first place. But good to know that they offer all the replacements because I am on the Freestyle Libre. But I will move us into the next question here, which is swimming and sand with a pump. Any tips or suggestions there?
Did you have anything specific to add to that? You said you had a couple of answers.
Just the water, just the waterproof pouch. I love it. I put my phone in it and then it works all the time. And I carabiner my Bluetooth speaker to my paddleboard and I have like the best time on the lake. So I just keeping it, always having to have the phone nearby. So certainly, there's some major advantages to being on MDI is that you don't have to worry about all your gear all the time.
I was just going to say I do the really similar thing for if I'm out on the water, like paddleboarding or something like that. But for lane swimming, like if you're at a pool, I guess it's a bit different. Obviously you don't want anything in your pockets because if you're swimming it in lanes, you're not wanting like baggy shorts and things with pockets on it. So I'll do like similar sort of thing, like all the prep work beforehand, I'll say this till I'm blue in the face. Like the more you do beforehand, I find the better outcome you get during it. You don't have to pause or stop or anything like that. So I'll yeah, do the same sort of thing, like suspend a pump bit beforehand, because I find because of the full body exercise that you get swimming, I always crash really quickly while I'm swimming because it's upper body and lower body and all sorts. So yeah, I find I have to be a bit more radical with it, like suspending a pump like half an hour before sometimes, and then just taking it off entirely during the event as well, and then kind of just testing every now and again during and doing that sort of thing. But beyond, I don't swim a massive amount, so I don't have too many suggestions for that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I found something massively helpful growing up at the lake where sand was the biggest thing is Tegaderm film. So putting that over top of the pump sites and the CGMs, and then honestly, if it's worry of getting in the pump, just throwing a plastic like Ziploc kind of thing, tightening over the straps there. But Tegaderm was my biggest help if sand is the most difficult thing, because I'm sure anyone who's been swimming where the sand is kicking up has experienced that. Tegaderm you can get in like big packs on Amazon or just at pharmacies here or there. If the person is on call wants to follow up about that, they are more than welcome to. And if not, I'll move us into the next question here. All right. So what is the best way to keep your sugars from dropping? Turning exercise profile on?
Yeah, so I just think that, yeah, if you have an exercise profile, that's great. I don't I do exercise at somewhat regular times, but I find that to me it was more emotional labor to make an exercise profile. So I just make sure that I have no active bolus on board, set my temp target 1 to 2 hours before I start, and then making sure that I have 10 to 15 grams of carbs 30 to 60 minutes before I start. So I really found that, yeah, the bolus on board was just unbelievably unpredictable, and there was no amount of math that was going to save me. So just not having it, no bolus on board for like 4 hours before I start. So for example, like if I'm going to the gym after work and I finish work at 4 o'clock, then I've actually started my temp target at 1 and I'm running it until 6 or 7. And so I won't have, my only carbs will have been my first 2 meals of the day. I get up really early for work at like 5 a.m. So my first meal's at 5, and then my next meal's at 9. On my meal at 1 will just be protein and vegetables. And then I'll have some carbs just before I go to the gym or just before I go running. And then I'll have a huge dinner afterward. So again, it really depends on the timing of your day. Like Dan said, planning is your biggest asset.
Yeah, I would definitely say the same thing. And yeah, I don't want to reiterate everything I've said before, but it's the same sort of thing, like just doing like 10 basals beforehand and everything. But I think the other really important thing there is making sure that you have all the gear. I know it is the biggest pain in the ass always having to carry out with you like all the like extra blood glucose supplies and monitor and things like that. But it's even more annoying. I've been like in the woods somewhere and I've not had enough stuff with me. Like I didn't kind of guess that I hadn't the right amount of sweets or whatever I had with me that day. So and then having to turn around and go back home or to a shop somewhere and end it early. So it's yeah, like making sure that you have enough stuff to bring with you as well is always just that like really helpful. Better than having to turn around. Yeah.
Like Susan said, having a pump failure in a foreign country is the biggest bummer. And I've had that experience before too, like trying to get the different pump companies in different regions to coordinate with each other of who's sending me a replacement pump. Like, oh, I know, I don't wish that on anybody.
All right, thank you both. If whoever submitted that question is on the call and wants to follow up. No. All right, so our next one, again, kind of having to do with the prep and everything, but I had a day pack once hit my pump infusion set and knock it off. Should I have brought a spare infusion set on that long day hike in Ireland? Do you suggest always taking extras of everything on longer hikes or adventures?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So when I was doing obstacle course racing, I was more susceptible to the pod failures. And so I didn't actually bring extra infusion sets with me. I brought some insulin pens with me, and so I would take that intermittently until I got to my destination, because I didn't want to bring my controller with me at that time. You know, when I wasn't looping, the pump controller was the big giant Omnipod brick, and I didn't want to carry that with me, right? So now that my phone is my controller, I do bring an extra, I would bring an extra infusion set with me and an insulin vial. But again, like, yeah, it's really only if it's more than 4 hours. Otherwise, I don't usually think about it.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Like if it's a short thing, like some 4 hours, as you were saying, I rarely, if ever, bring any extras with me, because you can always kind of just make do until you get somewhere that you can have the stuff back. But yeah, like over the summers when I'm doing like a backcountry hiking, that's the time that I've probably had always have to bring stuff with me. One, because you don't have you're not somewhere close to where you can get a hold of it, but also I less hitting pumps and things, like taking it off or catching on door handles. I think the thing that always messes me up the most is when it's really hot outside and you're really sweaty, just it coming off. And I know what Caleb
Yes.
mentioned there earlier with the extra stuff. I can't remember what it's called, but having like the extra sticky layer of
Yeah.
yes, that one. Having
Yeah.
that over top is a game changer, and it saved me so many times. But it's definitely incredibly helpful.
I remember losing my pod after going. I went down the Penticton River float, and then I went camping in a Soyuz, and the combination of like having already wet the glue like the day before, and then being out in like plus 40-degree weather in the desert, it just peeled right off, like fell off of me, and I was like, oh no.
Yeah,
So
it's happened so many times after rugby games. Like I've got like tape over it and things like that, so it doesn't get ripped off or anything. But just because there's sweat and all sorts, like it just comes off, and it's like, oh crap. So that it's always a matter of, oh, I wish I had that with me. So it's just better to have it with you than and not need it than be without it for sure.
I also use skin tack sometimes before I put the pod on, and that helps firm. And also getting back to what you said about a long day hike. I once had an Omnipod that failed, and all I had with me was my glucometer. I didn't have any extra insulin. I didn't have another pod, but inside the glucometer zip, I had some syringes. So I removed the pod, and I took the insulin out of the pod with the syringe and gave myself.
yes.
And that brought sugars down. So, but it's so hard to know. If you take insulin and another infusion set, then you need to keep your insulin cold, and suddenly you're taking a lot more supplies than you really want to.
Yeah, and I was just going to say one other thing, building on, I think a couple of other questions have come through the chat that are related to this, but if you're trying to carry extra insulin, because it is like for instance, whenever I'm going like multi-day hikes, I do bring extra insulin with me, and keeping it cold in the summer is a real struggle. But I found the thing that is the best is Frio. It's I'm not sure if okay, I'm getting a few nods there. Yes, it's basically just this pack that you soak in water, and by doing that it keeps it cool. I don't have a clue how it works, but it's got these little beads in it which absorb the water and keep it cold. And I've been in I went around Australia in the summer, and that kept it cold enough, so because it doesn't need to be super cold, but it definitely does the job. And so that's really helpful for on hot days to keep insulin supply cold.
Excellent. Thank you both. So our last question here that is exercise specific, afterwards we'll kind of move into supplies, is what impact does aerobic exercise have on blood glucose versus anaerobic exercise? What strategies are useful for spontaneous exercise, especially with insulin on board?
So it depends on, some people will define aerobic, anaerobic as like cardio and resistance training, but I define it as aerobic is being something steady state that I'm doing for an extended period of time, and something anaerobic is a different kind of workout like sprinting or speed training. So I find that during aerobic activity, my blood sugar will drop. And during anaerobic activity, it won't really drop much, but I connect that more to the duration of the activity than the intensity, because a cardio workout for me, again, in trail running, I'll be out for 1 to 3 hours at a time, whereas a speed training workout for me is only going to be half an hour, because I'm going to be doing, say, like 200-meter sprints, walking a minute, and then doing those repeats, right? So strategies for spontaneous exercise with insulin on board would be consuming a lot of carbohydrates. That would be, for me, that, again, depending on the insulin on board, I would probably consume at least 2 tablespoons of maple syrup or 30 grams of glucose, whatever's easiest that you can reach for. And again, something liquid and gooey. As soon as it's solid, it's another thing your body has to break down to get that to you, right? So
Yeah, I was going to say a similar thing. Yeah, because I know it's all great and all us talking about like, oh, 2 hours before, 3 hours before, start doing this. So like, it's more often than not, I find like you're going to do something and then it's only like an hour or half an hour before, or literally the moment of. So yeah, like it's always just I always just the matter of just eating lots beforehand. I know it's really annoying, but just bringing lots with you. Like I do a similar sort of thing. I just have like a cup of orange juice just before I leave, often for like a rugby practice, which randomly sprung up or something like that. But yeah,
I've had my blood sugar crash grocery shopping several times. Like, I'm pretty sure the little samples at Costco on the weekend saved me from like killing people. Like, honestly, like there's all kinds of, we would love to be prepared, but we can't always be prepared. So yeah, just somebody in the chat said when the Dexes ran out that they went onto the rockets. So look at me, I've got 6 packs of rockets sitting here at my computer desk. They did read very well for a while, but those little packages, the little plastic seam was starting to open inside of my purse, and then I got rockets on the inside of my bag, and I was really sad. So anything that I can seal, like a bottle, I'm stoked.
yeah, I mainly have like Cliff Bars and just packets of sweets
Yep.
is the main sort of thing I use. Yeah, because they're really easy, and you can get like rather than buying individual Cliff Bars, I think where do I get if you go to Costco, you can get like the bulk boxes of them, and they are significantly cheaper than buying them individually. And the benefit of that as well with Cliff Bars and packets of sweets is when you do go camping, obviously they're more, I don't know if they are scent proof, but I would imagine they're more so than like an open bag. So I find that's a bit more ease of mind when I'm in the backcountry with food on me, because obviously you got to have stuff in your tent with you. So having a sealed something is always very nice.
Someone
I
in the
once
chat said they put rockets in a small container, and I was like, oh yeah, exactly. Those little containers that I showed earlier. I could just dump these all out and stick them in, and
There you go.
amazing. There we go.
I once was at Costco and I dropped because they were just walking around. I had to hightail it to the concession stand. This was during COVID to get a pop. I'm over to the side drinking it, and an employee comes up to me and is like, "You can't have that right now. You have to have your mask on." I'm like, "This is an emergency. If you don't want to have to call 911, you let me drink this now." Like,
Yeah,
seriously?
I've sat down on the floor of the grocery store so I don't fall over. Like, there's been clutching a pop bottle for dear life. Yeah.
Right. And I do see it's already 7:02 here. I don't know if you guys are available for another like 10 minutes to go through our last 5 questions here and then any in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right. So going into supplies here, the first one is there a way to tell insulin has gone bad or expired?
I saw this question beforehand. I don't actually have an answer for this one. I was really hoping, Stephanie, that you did.
No, I've never, honestly, I know that seems to be like a big concern for people, but I've never had a vial of insulin go bad. I've consumed it. So it's I've actually run into more issues with my phone overheating and turning itself off than I've had any issues with insulin. So as long as you're not keeping it like on your car dashboard, like in the direct sunlight, it can withstand pretty good temperatures. Like I've never been concerned about spoiling a whole vial, and it can stay at room temperature for 28 days if you haven't introduced air into it. So you only need to keep it cold if you're bringing a new, like if you're bringing an opened vial, but even then it's really, yeah, I haven't been concerned about it.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happens all the time. Like when you're traveling,
Really?
happens all the time. When you're traveling for long distances, your insulin, like literally when you're at the airport, I have a freezer pack, but they want to always scan the freezer pack. So the freezer pack always goes off to the side. You know, if you don't have a freezer pack when you're traveling, you're gone for a month, you're traveling in Spain, Portugal, wherever you are, your insulin sometimes there's one vial that's just not good. So it's different for you guys. A lot of you guys with pumps, it's different. If you're just doing injections, there's a vial that's going to go bad, and it happens all the time. And you just realize it. How come that didn't work? Why am I still high? Why am I still high? That didn't work. I really thought I'm doing a good job today. It didn't work. It's because that insulin is bad. It's off. So, and you just question yourself all the time about that.
See, I guess
No.
I've had so many random highs for other reasons that I've never attributed it to the insulin. Because again, like you could be stressed, you're in another time zone. My blood sugar spikes all the time when I'm traveling because I'm on a different routine, like I'm in a different time zone. Like there's all kinds of things that could be affecting it. I don't usually suspect that it's the insulin, but somebody else put in the chat that you can see if it's gone bad because it starts to
because it's
have
cloudy.
flakes in it. Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard that.
Oh, okay.
I've heard it. I've never experienced it. Again, like I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. I just haven't experienced that. I mean, if vials are at risk of spoiling, then wouldn't carrying insulin pens be better because there's less insulin per vial, right? There's only 2.5 milliliters instead of 10 milliliters, right?
I think the vial is 100 milliliters.
No, it's 10 mil. I think it's 10 milliliter. 10 milliliters. You get 100 units per milliliter of insulin. Pretty sure. Yeah.
Hi, it's Pat Armstrong here. If I could interject, I had one vial go bad on me. Perhaps I had just lost track of time and it was longer than 28 days because it was properly stored. I just noticed that my blood sugar was going very high and there really was no logical reason for it. So I thought, okay, I'll check my vial, and sure enough, it had gone cloudy. So that had gone bad. I had to remove my pump, get a new vial and fill that pump. And in the meantime, I had to take bolus to tide me over because I still had that bad insulin in me, and I had to wait for the new insulin to come on board or to start working. Anyway, it must have just been my mistake because I've never had it happen since. But
that's the constant bolusing. I've done that a few times when I find that I have a pod leak. So it's definitely like I don't know how much of that insulin was delivered, and I have to maintain with that. So I've definitely come across that experience before. Yeah.
Yeah, and just one additional thing that just reminded me of I always another backcountry camping thing, because I find there's always so many things you have to plan for with that. But yeah, when I'm going out, if I'm bringing insulin with me, I bring the pen ones, because that way if I break my insulin pump or it stops working, gets water in it or something like that, then I with me, and like I can just do it that way rather than, because in the past I always just brought vials because that's just always what I do to fill up my pump. But I would the pens one with me now, so I have the option of both if my pump does break while I'm out. Elsewhere doing stuff.
And also, I just wanted to say that if you're wearing a pod or an insulin pump, or if I have in the past, they do get overheated. If you're hiking in the sun, direct sun, try to keep them covered, but they do get overheated and the insulin inside them will spoil.
Right. Thank you all. That kind of brings us into our next question here, which was, insulin pods on the body and in the sun for extended periods of time. Are there any strategies with that?
Yeah, I just said just have more sugar on hand because again, I'm way more insulin sensitive in the summer than I am in the winter. So, but I haven't found any pods to get damaged from the heat specifically. I just find that I need more sugar for sure.
Yeah, I had that issue before.
I discovered an armband that I got from Amazon, which covers the pod and keeps it somewhat cooler. So it avoids the direct sunlight from hitting it if you're exercising outside.
Oh, awesome.
Cool.
All right, moving into our next one here. It is, I keep my current vial of insulin at room temperature in the house and the extra vial in the fridge. What precautions do I need to take storing insulin while driving in the car for up to 8 hours?
Yeah, for that one, what I mentioned earlier, the Frio packs is what they're called. I found they're perfectly fine for being in a car for ages, even in the heat. Yeah, they work great because then if you don't have the option to have a bunch of ice in a big cooler or if the car's full of other stuff, I found they're a great option. And they're not too expensive. You can get different sizes of the ones to bring a whole bunch of insulin or just one or two. So there's a good variety there.
Yeah, I haven't really run into that issue on longer car trips. I just keep my insulin in my purse, and my purse is on the floor of my car, so it's cold. Like it's not not in the direct sunlight. If I'm super worried about it, I'll put it in my trunk again because my trunk's going to be a little bit colder. But yeah, I haven't had that concern, or I haven't had that issue, I should say.
All right, thank you both. There are just 2 questions left in this section. This one is, what are some tips for keeping all of your supplies manageable since all the bags for packing and carrying them can really add up?
I would just go back to my trail running vest. That's again been my staple, the thing that I can have with me that doesn't interfere with my movement. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say for short things like that, I have a similar thing for mountain biking. There's just a little saddle pouch that I have on for that. For longer trips, I kind of have like a little dough bag thing. It's like this hard shell bag that I have glucagon in it. I have 2 changes of sights, extra test strips, monitors, pens, everything. It's only about like that big or so. Like it's a little bit big, but it fits everything in it. I can just grab it and go, and it fits in a bag pretty comfortably. And yeah, like for a couple of day things, that's perfect.
Bikes are great because you can strap stuff to them.
Yeah.
I went on a 3-day bicycle camping trip a few years, 3 years ago, and I just put it all in the panniers. There was always a bag to put stuff in. So it sucks that it takes up room, but you can make it pretty compact, definitely.
Yeah.
Right, awesome. And our last one here is tips to handle the heat and insulin together when being outdoors.
Yeah, same thing as we said earlier. Like I just try to keep my insulin in a dark place. I just don't, leave it outside exposed in the sunlight. I haven't had any issues with it. Honestly, the phone overheating has been the way bigger issue. And certainly running all these apps makes my power drain pretty fast. So I always have a portable phone charger in my purse, or if I was going on a longer duration activity where I knew I wasn't going to be getting power or going camping or something like that, I'll just bring my portable phone charger and make sure that it's charged up and ready to go. But I should actually be bringing an extra phone with me, but I haven't gotten around to setting that up yet.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. Like I was worried for a long time, like shortly after diagnosis as well, like doing activities in the sun or just going on trips where on the summer or whatever. But I promise I'm not sponsored by Frio, but like the little bags are a godsend if that's something you're really worried about. If you are going somewhere for a short while in the sun, for sure, they are brilliant. And literally, like, you could just be in a campsite, stick it in the river for 10 minutes, and then it cools up off again. I think you just need to redo that every 24 hours, I think it is, and then it keeps it cool enough to, yeah, for you to keep your insulin in it.
All right, awesome. Thank you. That wraps up all of our pre-submitted questions here. We'd like to thank all of our wonderful guest speakers joining us to lead this month's huddle and sharing your knowledge and experiences. This is such an important topic, and we appreciate the transparency from our speakers. Thank you, everyone who attended tonight, especially since we went a little over time here. We really hope that you enjoyed the session. We are continuously working on improving the huddle session, and we'd love to hear from you. If you have 5 minutes to spare, please consider filling out this short feedback survey. We look at every single comment, and your suggestions help shape the huddle. If you have trouble accessing the survey, you can also contact our huddle coordinators, Soraya and Lena, who has been sending you emails at ssadine@hotmail.com or lmazar@student@ubc.ca, which I will put all of this in the chat for us now. But thank you again for Daniel and Stephanie for providing such great and valuable information about this summer and our insulin and all those things, all our adventures.
Get out there, live your best life. Just honestly, do it. Do it. Don't ever let diabetes stop you. There's so much world to go explore out there.
Yeah, thank you very much, Caleb, for running this with us, and thank you everybody for coming.
Yeah, thanks for attending and the great questions.
Thanks, Lena, for kicking it off.
Thank you all. We'll see you in September for our new huddles.